President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, is under investigation. He reportedly tried to establish a secret communications channel between the Trump team and the Kremlin. The meetings are believed to have taken place in early December with the Russian ambassador to the United States. And for a closer look at this developing story, we're reaching out right now to Kevin Eckery. He's a Republican strategist and a political and crisis management consultant. He joins us right now from Sacramento in California. Kevin, nice to have you on the program again. You know, here we have it, these reports saying that Jared Kushner tried to establish this back channel in meetings that were undisclosed with Russian contacts. It seems that these reports are getting closer and closer to Donald Trump, but we're talking about his son-in-law, his closest advisor. How troubling is that?
Well, it's actually, it's troubling, but what's troubling is not necessarily the whole idea of a back channel. I mean, you know, the leaders of countries all around the world create these informal ways of talking to one another just so that they can, you know, get their stories straight sometimes or take care of misunderstandings before you go through official channels. So by itself, yeah, setting up a back channel is healthy. It's not troublesome. But the notion of setting up a back channel purposely to keep it secret from the American government and then to use Russian equipment, Russian diplomatic codes, and Russian technology to carry it out is quite odd.
Well, odd. And to that point, I want to bring in a comment here from the U.S. National Security Advisor. We're talking about H.R. McMaster. He spoke to the Reuters news agency just a few hours ago. We got to say he did not answer any questions about Kushner, but this is what he had to say about establishing back channels. We have a quote here for people at home. He said, quote, "We have back channel communications with any number of individual countries." So generally speaking, about back channel communications, what that allows you to do is communicate in a discreet manner. So it doesn't pre-expose you to any sort of content or any kind of conversation or anything. We're not concerned about it. Essentially saying what you're saying, but here we are, this is H.R. McMaster. And part of the report has to say, yes, it's a back channel, but it is to circumvent U.S. intelligence, U.S. authorities. What's happening here with McMaster?
Well, I think that he's definitely being a company man, as he's done before during the discussion about the disclosure of confidential and highly classified information in the White House, and which is sad and ironic, because this is a man who has an incredible reputation of speaking truth to power and whose personal integrity has been unassailed. But now on at least two different occasions, he's gone out there as an apologist for the Trumps in a way that is really more an apologist not for the president, but for the Trump family concern, which currently occupies the White House.
We also should talk about the veracity of this report, though, because in reporting that Jared Kushner had these communications with Russian contacts, the media are really attributing this all to unnamed sources. They're not using any names at all whatsoever. So how reliable, how credible is this report? Is there a possibility that what we're actually looking at is fake news, even possibly out of Russia?
I think that that's always something that we should do. I mean, if the last campaign has taught us nothing, it's to be, you know, highly intelligent and maybe skeptical consumers of news. So we shouldn't just run out and instantly say whatever we saw on the internet is true. Having said that, though, this is something that the Washington Post broke. They say they spent several months trying to, you know, work up the facts behind the story, that they knew the outlines of it months ago. And at this point in time, I would put David Fahrenthold in the Times, or rather in the Times too. I'd put David Fahrenthold in the Post on a much higher pedestal for credibility than many other sources.
Now, Kushner, we have to say, did not disclose some of his meetings with the Russians on his security clearance form that's required when you take on the role as a White House advisor. How significant is it that Kushner did not disclose this?
Again, I think that that's an open question. I mean, he said it was an oversight, and as someone who served in government and knows about all the forms you have to fill out, oversights do occur. I mean, one of the problems associated with the Trump administration is that through their actions, they've created this feverish environment. It's like when we were talking off camera about not remembering the news cycle from 2 days ago, much less, you know, being able to keep track of it for a week. And in that frenzied environment, things that might otherwise be benign, all of a sudden, you know, are being talked about in very sinister tones. A back channel is good. A back channel using Russian technology and Russian facilities isn't a back channel. It's just odd. And so I think you've got a combination of naivete coming from the Trump White House. I mean, these are people who have never circulated in this kind of an environment before. They disdain, in fact, sort of the experience of established diplomacy. And I don't know that the White House is currently in a listening mode. I think they're still in a, we want to use our words to create the reality that we campaigned on rather than what the reality really is. I mean, that certainly was the case talking about Germany, for example, where it was, they have this huge trade surplus, or where they have this, they're sending millions of cars to the United States, which they're not. And notwithstanding the new controversies, and I have to smile with Canada, since you're threatening the United States so badly with your timber exports.
Yeah.
So and no, you're not. But this clash of reality with what we want reality to be, because we create this rather dark and scary world that only we can save you from, that gets old. And how long that's going to be maintainable by the White House is to be seen. I think that right now we're a little trough. I mean, the relatively successful trip to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, and I think you have to say that. Mm-hmm. And now the not so successful trip to NATO and G7 did provide a respite for the frenzied headlines of disorganization and duplicity that the Trump people had been generating last week. And I think that it's going to start right back up again come the beginning of the week.
Well, as you say, it's going to come up right up again because the FBI, we have to repeat this, right now they are investigating Paul Manafort, the former campaign chief for Donald Trump. They're investigating Mike Flynn, his first nominee for the National Security Advisor. They're now considering his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a person of interest. As a Republican, how is the grassroots of your party feeling right now? Are they confident in this man, or are they worried about what he's doing not only to the U.S. democracy, but also to the GOP?
Well, and frankly, if you're doing something to the U.S. democracy, you're doing something to democracy around the world. And that's something that we have to consider and talk about. I mean, he's doing a lot of damage to a lot of people, whether it's the Republican Party or to sort of our republic as a whole. How long can this continue? I don't know. I think that you saw certainly a lot of support for the idea of a special counsel and a special prosecutor. You saw how the president himself, through his words, made this an inevitability and a necessity. I think that there's some hope among Republican policy types that he will be around long enough to deal with substantive tax reform or substantive health care reform. But I think that in their heart of hearts, people just don't know what's going to happen. But right now they want to deal with at least someone they hope will sign legislation rather than someone who they know will veto legislation. And how that Faustian bargain plays out, I think we're going to find that out in 2018.
Kevin, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.
Take care. That's Kevin Eckery, a Republican strategist and political and crisis management consultant. He joins us in Sacramento, California.